The baobab rose from the red earth like a giant turned upside down, its roots reaching for the sky. Its trunk was so wide that 10 grown men could not link hands around it. The bark was scarred, pale in some places, dark in others, as if the seasons had written letters only the wind could read. When the sun woke over the plains, the tree caught the first light and held it, gold along its scars. When night fell, the baobab stood like a shadow with a heartbeat. People said the tree had stood there since the beginning of time. Before the first hut, before the first drumbeat, the baobab watched. When storms rolled in, the tree did not bow. When heat burned the fields, the tree did not crack. It kept a strange, cool hush under its branches, even on the hottest day. Birds nested there and then moved on. Hyenas circled and kept their distance. Children, curious as they were, only stared from the path and kept their feet moving. No one touched the baobab. Everyone knew the rule, but no one knew all of the reasons. The rule was passed in soft voices and hard eyes. Do not touch the tree, mothers said while stirring porridge. Do not climb the tree, fathers warned as they fixed fences. Do not sing under its shade after dark, grandmothers added, pulling shawls tight around their shoulders. And if a child asked why, a hand would wave the question away. Because it is not our place, the elders would say. Because it holds more than we can carry. At night, when the cooking fires dimmed, stories floated over the village like smoke. They said the baobab was a door that opened both ways, into the past and into the heart. They said blessings slept there, but curses kept watch. Some swore the tree could hear the true names of those who stood close. Others swore it could taste the salt of their tears. On certain nights, when the moon was thin and sharp, the wind threaded through the branches and sounded like quiet singing. On other nights, the same wind fell silent, and even the crickets held their breath. The elders guarded the story the way a shepherd guards water in a drought. They knew pieces, and the pieces fit like shards of clay. A promise once broken, a warning once ignored, a cost paid by someone long ago. But when questions rose, the elders spoke around the edges. Long before us, they would begin, the tree watched a mistake. Their eyes drifted to the horizon. We live with the echo of it. Then they would close their mouths as if the air itself might carry the rest of the tale into the wrong ears. Fear did not come from shouting. It came from the quiet. Children felt it most when they walked past the baobab at noon and the cicadas went still, or when noon shadows gathered under the tree like dark water. They felt it when they saw the old rope scar near the low branch and wondered how it came to be, or when a sudden gust lifted dust around the roots and made small spirals that vanished as fast as they formed. Even so, curiosity moved in the village like a slow river. It pulled at the young and the restless. It pulled at those who had lost someone and longed for answers. It pulled at those who woke from dreams of a voice calling from the shade. Some people said the tree could heal a broken heart. Some said it could bring rain if you asked in the right way. Some warned that it gave gifts with one hand and took with the other. People argued in whispers, because the tree was near enough to hear. When droughts came, eyes turned to the baobab. When fever spread, hands balled into fists and opened again, empty. The rule held. No one touched the tree. But the longer the hard seasons stayed, the heavier the rule felt. It pressed down on the village like a lid, and underneath, questions boiled. The baobab waited. That was its way. It had watched the first hunters track antelope across the plain. It had watched the river change its course. It had watched wars begin and end. It knew that people did not stand still. Everyone carried a reason that could be sharpened, a sorrow that could become a key. The wind traced the scars on its bark and carried the smell of dust and distant rain. Birds shifted in their sleep. The moon climbed. On the edge of the village, a child lay awake, listening to the quiet that wasn't empty. The child had a hole in the heart where a loved one used to be. In that hole, questions grew. They reached for the baobab the way roots reach for water. The child closed their eyes and saw the tree's pale scars and the low branch like an arm stretched out. In the morning, the rule would still be the rule. Parents would still warn, elders would still guard, and everyone would still walk the long way around the baobab. But rules have edges, and edges wear down. Somewhere between fear and hope, a small decision was forming, thin as the first crack in dry earth. The Baobab felt it the way it felt thunder before the cloud. It was only a matter of time before someone stepped off the path and into the shade. And when that happened, the balance of the village, the old balance that had held for generations, would shift. Not with a shout, but with a breath. Not with a storm, but with a hand reaching out, slow and trembling, toward the bark. Morning begins with the soft thud of pestles and the rustle of dry grass. Smoke hangs low, thin and blue, rising from cooking fires that never seem to rest. The village wakes, not with noise, but with work. Women bend over pots. Men check snare lines and cracked fences. Children carry yellow jugs to the far well, their feet whitening with dust. The land is brown and stubborn. The wind tastes like clay. Drought has a way of slowing time. It turns every task into a long walk. The fields wait for rain that does not come. Maize plants stand like tired soldiers. Goats scrape at the ground for anything green. A bucket of clean water is a treasure. A bowl of porridge is a promise kept for one more day. People do not complain much. They save their breath for the heat. Even so, the village is alive. Laughter leaks out of doorways. A baby's cry is answered by careful hands. A mother sings while she stirs, a song with short words and long hope. Boys race each other, their bare heels flashing in the sun. Grandmothers sit in a circle and weave, their fingers moving like small birds. When the sun lifts, a drum taps twice, and a hush spreads, like everyone is holding the same thought. Then the work begins again. Io is 13 and does not like to be still. He moves fast, as if the ground might give way if he stays in one place too long. His shoulders are thin but strong. His hair curls close to his head and always holds a little dust. He lives with his grandmother, Miri, and his little sister, Sefa, in a small round hut with a roof like a straw hat. The walls are cool in the morning. At night, they hold the day's heat. Io wakes before the drum. He rolls from his mat and watches the roof's shadow shift with the first light. He listens for his mother's cough, the one that used to come before dawn. It does not come. It has not come for many months. The silence presses against his chest, heavy and familiar. He sits up and ties a strip of cloth around his wrist. It belonged to her. The cloth is worn, soft where his thumb rubs it when he is sad or angry or trying not to cry. He steps outside. Miri is already at the fire, stirring porridge with a carved spoon. She nods to him, and he takes the water jug without being asked. The path to the well cuts along the edge of the village, then turns toward the open plain. The Baobab rises in the distance like a mountain pretending to be a tree. Even from far away, Io feels its pull. He looks once, then forces his eyes to the ground and counts his steps. At the well, the world gathers. Girls laugh and bump shoulders. Old men talk about seasons like they are people who have lost their way. Io waits his turn, steals a glance at the horizon. The sun is fat and white. The Baobab's crown looks like a cloud that never moves. Io fills the jug and hoists it to his shoulder. He walks home beside Safu, his friend, who talks about goats and a broken sandal and a dream he had about catching a fish with his hands. Io nods and smiles when he should. Inside, his thoughts circle one thing. Back at the compound, Io and Miri pound maize in a shared rhythm. Sefa chases a chicken and falls and laughs. Their neighbor brings a handful of dried beans. Later, Miri trades 2 bracelets for a small pile of cassava. We look out for each other, she says, not as a lesson but as a fact. When someone's roof leaks, the village lifts it. When someone's child is sick, the village watches through the night. People have little, but they stretch it across many hands. Yet the drought has taken more than water. It has taken the easy way people used to speak. It has thinned the space between want and worry. Io feels it most at dusk, when shadows lengthen and the Baobab turns dark against the pink sky. The tree seems closer in the evening, as if the light draws it in. He remembers the day his mother's fever burned like noon. He remembers the cool cloth on her head, the prayer whispered into the mat, the way Miri's jaw tightened. Io had wanted to run to the tree and press his hands to the bark and beg for mercy. He did not go. He did not know if the tree would answer or if it would take something more. He tells himself the rule is protection, not punishment. He tells himself to stop thinking like a thief of secrets. But grief is a slow river. It finds its own path. When he returns from the fields in the late afternoon, he sometimes pauses where the path bends and the baobab peeks through the thorn bushes. He feels a low hum inside his chest, like a drum under a blanket. He wonders if the tree holds stories like jars hold water. He wonders if it keeps the last breath of those who pass, if it can return it, even for a moment. That night, after the meal, the village gathers in the common space. The air is soft with ash and stars. An old man says a child in the next village grew strong after sleeping under a sacred figure. A woman shakes her head and says curses are faster than blessings. Someone mentions the baobab and the circle closes like a fist. Eyes drop. The talk shifts to goats and rain that may come next week or next month. Io listens and learns how silence can be louder than words. He lies down beside Sefer and watches the roof again. A moth taps the wall. A small breeze lifts the mat's edge and slides cool along his calves. In his mind, the baobab stands clear and close, every scar lit by moonlight. He closes his eyes and sees his mother's smile. For a moment, the ache eases, the way a sore spot eases when you press it. He breathes in. He breathes out. In the morning, he promises himself to work hard, to keep his eyes on the ground, to carry water and hope and not look toward the forbidden shade. It is a small promise, a way to hold himself steady. For a while, it works. He moves through the day like a thread through cloth, useful, steady, unseen. But as the sun climbs, a thin line of birds drifts toward the tree and circles as if called. The goats refuse the path and balk. Somewhere, a pot cracks in the heat, a sharp, clean sound. Io looks up before he can stop himself. The baobab waits on the horizon, patient as a held breath. Something has shifted. He can't name it yet. He only knows the question inside him has grown teeth. Tomorrow, he will walk the long way home. Tomorrow, he will not look at the tree. Tomorrow has a way of changing its mind. The first sign was the way the elders lowered their voices when Io walked by. It started at the grinding place, under the shade of a thorn tree. Io brought maize to Miri, then paused when he heard Elder Nuru and Auntie Can speaking. Their words were soft, like feet on ash. The knot was tied before our mothers were born, Elder Nuru said. And a debt still stands, Auntie Can answered. The tree remembers. Io kept his eyes on the baskets and pretended to count kernels. The words slid into him and stayed, like seeds pressed into soil. Not. Debt. Remembers. Later, by the well, two hunters argued in the way men argue when fear wears the mask of anger. One said the antelope had changed their path, another said the wind was wrong near the baobab. When they noticed Io listening, their mouths closed at the same time, like doors clicking shut. That night, Io lay awake and watched the roof, the familiar pattern of the grass weaving. He thought of the elders' broken sentences. He thought of his mother's soft laugh and the empty space where it used to be. The rule said do not touch the tree. But the rule did not answer why the goats refused to graze near it now, or why the birds circled without landing, like they were reading something written in the air. The second sign came 3 days later, when the wind picked up at noon. It blew hot across the fields, shook the dry maize, and made the huts whisper. When it reached the baobab, it changed. A low sound rose from the branches, not quite a song, not quite a cry. Io felt it in his ribs before he heard it with his ears. Sefer looked up from her game with stones and frowned. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Io wanted to say no. He wanted to say it was only wind. Instead, he nodded. The sound lifted and fell, like a voice trying to speak through sleep. The adults went still. Miri's hand paused over the pot. Elder Nuru stood and stared at the horizon with eyes that had seen too many seasons. Then he sat back down and began to hum a prayer under his breath. That evening, a pale flicker grew near the baobab just after sunset. It was not fire. It was not moonlight. It was more like the light that lives inside a shell, soft and strange. It pulsed as if the tree were breathing. A dog howled and then fell silent. The flicker faded after a few heartbeats, but the memory of it stayed, the way the taste of smoke stays long after a fire dies. The village tried to act normal. People still worked. Children still laughed. But a thin thread of worry ran through every task. Io felt it coil tight around his chest. He began to listen more carefully to what was not said. In the pauses, he heard a story no one would tell. He started to dream of the baobab. In one dream, the tree bent low, its branches like arms. In another, he stood at the roots and felt cool air come up from the ground, as if there were a hidden river below. He woke each time with his hand on the strip of cloth around his wrist, his mother's cloth, damp with sweat. Curiosity was not a sharp shout inside him. It was a soft knock that kept returning. It came when he fetched water, when he chased the goats away from the fence, when he watched Miri's hands tremble as she lifted the pot. He told himself the elders had wisdom. He told himself the rule kept the village safe. But he also told himself that love sometimes asks for courage, and courage sometimes looks like stepping where no one has stepped. The third sign arrived like a stone dropped in still water. Sefer got sick. It was small at first, just a fever and a cough. Children get fevers, Miri said. They pass like storms. She bathed Sefer with cool water and sang the old songs that were more breath than words. Io sat with them and counted each rise and fall of Sefer's chest. The count steadied him, like holding on to the edge of a boat. But the fever did not pass. It climbed, slow but sure. Sefer's eyes went glassy. She dreamed with her eyes half open and called for their mother, her voice thin as paper. Io felt the ground tilt. He ground herbs, fetched water, ran for the healer, ran back. The healer came and left a bundle of leaves that smelled bitter and clean. For a night, Sefer's skin cooled. Everyone breathed. In the morning, the heat returned like a thief who had found the open window. Io's fear grew teeth. He chewed on it until it hurt to swallow. He tried to pray, but the words tangled. He tried to work, but his hands shook. He looked to the elders and saw a wall of silence. He looked to the baobab and saw a door. By afternoon, the sky turned white with heat. Goats gathered in the sliver of shade next to the fence, their sides moving fast. A line of egrets rose from the field and circled the baobab, not once, not twice, but 7 times, then flew off toward the dry riverbed. A stray dog crept up the path, ears flat, and then dropped to its belly when a breath of wind moved through the tree's crown. Even the insects seemed to step back from the air. It felt like the moment after someone says your name in a room where you thought you were alone. Io went to the edge of the compound and stood where he could see the tree without being seen himself. The baobab stood steady, full of shadow and memory. He felt the same low hum in his chest, almost like the tree was speaking without sound. He remembered the elder's words, a knot tied, a debt standing, a mistake watched. He remembered Miri's face at dawn, older by a year in one night. He remembered his mother's laugh and the way she used to hold Sefer's feet to warm them. He pressed his thumb against the cloth on his wrist until it hurt, and he told himself the truth he had not wanted to say out loud. If there was even a thin chance the tree could help, he would take it. But fear argued back. It reminded him of stories where gifts cut both ways. It whispered of curses that move faster than blessings, of rules that stand for a reason you cannot see. It asked him who he thought he was, a boy with dust on his heels, to walk into a place that elders avoided. Io stood there a long time, while the light softened and the baobab darkened against the sky. Sefer coughed from inside the hut, a small sound, and his decision moved from maybe to must. He went to Miri and knelt beside the mat. Sefer slept, her breath too warm. Miri's hands were folded, her lips moving. When she looked up, Io saw the same fear he felt, reflected back, and something like trust resting beside it. "I will be back before the moon is high," he said, his voice steady because it had to be. Miri studied him for a long breath. She did not ask where. She did not say no. She reached for his wrist, for the cloth, and held it for a moment, as if she was holding all the years between his birth and now. Then she let go and nodded once, the smallest blessing. Io rose. He took the gourd, not for water but because holding something kept his hands from shaking. He stepped into the twilight. The village buzzed in the quiet way a hive does at night, all motion tucked under. The path to the fields was a pale ribbon. Beyond the thorn bushes, the baobab waited, a dark shape against a sky full of first stars. The wind lifted, cool for the first time in days. It brushed his face like a whisper that sounded almost like his name. He did not run. He walked, counting his steps the way he once counted Sepha's breaths. Each number felt like a small promise, to be brave, to be careful, to be enough. Behind him, a door cloth fell shut. Ahead, the earth held the day's heat and gave it back as he passed. Somewhere to his left, an owl called once, then twice. The air tasted like dust and something sweet, like sap. Io reached the bend in the path where the thorn bushes parted. He saw the broad trunk, the low branch with its old scar, the ground at the base smoothed by wind and time. For a heartbeat, fear was the only thing inside him. It flashed bright and then fell away, like lightning too far to hear. He took another step and felt the first edge of the baobab's shade touch his feet. The crossing had begun. The night was heavy, as if the sky itself leaned down on the village. Stars pricked through the darkness, sharp and countless, but even their glow felt distant, like they were watching from another world. The huts were quiet. A baby whimpered once, then hushed. A dog shifted, sighed, and went still again. Io waited until Miri's breathing deepened, slow and even, and Sepha's weak cough settled into silence. He lay still a moment longer, his heart drumming in his chest, each beat louder than the last. Then he rose. Bare feet on the packed earth, careful not to let the mat creak. He slipped outside, the cloth around his wrist brushing his skin like a question he could no longer ignore. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of dust and ash. Shadows stretched long and thin between the huts. Io's body moved like water, quick but quiet, as if he was part of the darkness itself. Every sound made him pause, the distant crack of a branch, the flap of wings, the sharp snap of a fire settling into ash. He half expected Miri's voice to call out, sharp and certain, pulling him back. But no one stirred. He reached the path beyond the huts. The thorn bushes framed the way like silent guards. Beyond them, the land opened wide, and the baobab rose in the distance, a black shape against the horizon, larger than life, larger than anything. Even from far away, it looked alive, like it was waiting for him. Io's chest tightened. His legs wanted to turn back, to run and bury himself beside Sepha and pretend this night had never happened. But then he thought of her fever, of her lips whispering for their mother, of Miri's eyes, tired, carrying sorrow like stones. He clenched his hands, felt the strip of cloth again, and forced his feet forward. The silence deepened the closer he walked. The insects that usually hummed at night had gone quiet. No crickets, no frogs, no rustling in the grass. Only his own footsteps, steady and soft, crunching against the dry earth. He felt watched, not by people, but by the land itself. The wind brushed past his ears in strange patterns, carrying sounds that weren't sounds, like whispers too far to catch. The baobab grew taller with every step. Its wide trunk stretched upward, its branches tangled against the sky like giant arms reaching out. Shadows clung to it, thick and heavy, as if even the moonlight dared not touch. Io slowed as he neared. His throat tightened. Sweat slid down his back despite the cool air. When he reached the base of the tree, he stopped. For the first time, he truly felt its size. The trunk was wider than a house, its bark gnarled and scarred like old skin. The roots rose from the ground like sleeping snakes, curling back into the earth. The air around it felt thick, hard to breathe. He stood frozen, staring. His mind screamed at him to turn back, to run, to forget. But another voice, a smaller, steadier one, reminded him why he was here. For Sepha. For the mother he had lost. For the questions no one would answer. Io reached out a trembling hand. His fingers hovered just above the bark, so close that he felt the air buzzing against his skin. He drew in a breath and pressed his palm to the baobab. The world shifted. A shock ran through his arm, cold and hot at the same time. His knees buckled. His chest felt full, too full, as though he had swallowed the whole night sky. Images crashed into his mind, faces he did not know, men and women crying, laughing, fighting, falling. A river flooding, then drying. A child's cry echoing under the stars. A drum beating in a rhythm that made his heart match its pace. Voices swirled in his head. Some whispered soft as lullabies, others thundered like storms. Words he could not understand layered over words he could. Promise, debt, remember. His eyes blurred. His hand burned against the bark, but he could not pull away. Tears slid down his face. He saw his mother's smile, then her stillness. He saw Sepha's small hands reaching for him. He wanted to scream. He wanted to beg. He wanted to ask the tree what it wanted from him, why it held these memories, why it had called him here. The ground shuddered beneath him. Not much, just enough to make the roots tremble under his feet. A sound rose from deep inside the tree, low and ancient, like the groan of something waking after centuries of sleep. The bark under his palm shifted, just slightly, but enough for him to feel it move, like muscle, like flesh. Io gasped and stumbled back, his hand tearing away from the trunk. The voices stopped, the visions cut off, but the weight of them lingered inside him like smoke. The tree stood silent again, but different now. No longer just watching. Aware. The wind rose, circling the branches, carrying the faint sound of something between a sigh and a growl. The shadows deepened, swallowing the roots, the trunk, the boy who stood trembling before it. And in that moment, Io knew this tree was not just a legend. It was alive. It was waiting. It was burdened with something too great for words. He took one shaky breath, the cloth on his wrist damp with sweat, and whispered to himself, barely louder than the night air. There's no going back now. The baobab creaked, its branches shifting against the stars. Something had stirred, and it was only the beginning. The first thing Io feels is falling without moving. The ground is under his feet, yet it isn't. The bark is under his palm, yet it isn't. The night bends around him like warm water. Stars blur into long lines. The scent of dust fades and is replaced by something older, wet earth after rain, smoke from a fire long gone, the sweet breath of crushed leaves. Then a light opens, not bright, but deep, like the glow inside a shell. It spreads from the heart of the baobab and pours into the dark. Shapes rise within it, paths, faces, a river that seems to flow both forward and back. Io's fear loosens, thread by thread, not because he is safe, but because the truth has entered the room. A voice arrives without sound. It is not a single voice. It is many voices speaking as one, women praying, men calling across fields, children laughing, elders naming the stars. When the voices breathe, the whole tree breathes with them. The bark under his hand is warm. It pulses, slow and steady, like a quiet drum. A figure steps out of the light. It is vast, but not frightening, majestic the way mountains are, sorrowful the way a song can be. The spirit is made of bark and wind and the soft glow of sap. Its eyes are the color of riverbed stones. When it looks at Io, he feels seen in a way he has never felt before, as if the spirit has counted every tear he has tried to hide and kept them safe. Io, the many-voiced voice says, without moving lips. Child of hunger and hope. You came with empty hands. That is how the door opens. He wants to speak but finds no words. Instead, the spirit lifts a branch hand and the dreamscape widens. The village appears, not as it is now, but as it was long ago, green fields, fat cattle, water laughing over stones. Children chase each other through tall grass. Drums call the sun to wake and the moon to rise. In the center of it all stands the baobab, full and bright, like a pillar holding up the sky. We were a house for promises, the spirit says. Here, hands met. Here, names were kept. Here, the living spoke to the gone and learned how to be human. Io sees people gather under the tree, hands touching the trunk. A mother asks for health, a hunter asks for courage, a widow asks for sleep. The tree listens and answers in quiet ways, rain in the right season, a path through tall grass, a dream that loosens grief. Gifts are given, and gifts are returned, goats, grain, songs. The balance holds. Then the colors turn sharp. New faces arrive, eyes hungry, voices loud. Some belong to strangers from beyond the hills. Some belong to villagers whose hearts have grown thirsty. They ask for more than they need, a field that is not theirs, a victory that is not earned, a love that is not freely given. They take without thanking. They ask without listening. They break small rules and call them nothing. The spirit's eyes dim. A fight spills under the branches. Blood touches the roots. A spear lodges in the bark, and the wound does not close. Promises snap like dry twigs. A couple who once swore to stand together turn their backs. A brother keeps a secret knife. A leader sells the truth to save his pride. The river of images rushes past Io, and he presses his palm harder to the bark, as if he could hold it all in place. Greed grows fast, the spirit says. It feeds on fear. It dresses like need. When it enters a house, it asks for the best seat. When it enters a heart, it asks for the door to be left open. The tree begins to change. The light around it dims, like a lamp covered by cloth. The roots, once thick with water, curl on themselves. Animals keep their distance. The people argue about what to do. Some say cut the tree and bury the wood. Some say pray louder. Some say ignore it and it will forget. An elder steps forward, a woman with white hair braided like river paths. She places both hands on the wound in the bark and speaks a vow Io feels more than hears. It is a vow to keep the tree from being used as a weapon. It is a vow to carry the weight of memory so others will not have to. It is a vow that will cost her sleep and family and, at the end, her name. We became forbidden not to punish, the spirit says, voice rough with sadness, but to protect. The door had to be guarded. The asking had to be taught to kneel. The dreamscape slows. Io sees the elders before his time teaching their children the rule. He sees mothers pull small hands away from the shade. He sees fathers walk the long path around the trunk, even when rain hammers and lightning splits the sky. He sees grief put on the shelf with the other heavy jars. He sees babies named for the lost. He sees love learn to live without answers. Tears fill Io's eyes. The spirit's sorrow is not a storm, it is a steady rain that has fallen for years. He feels his own grief lift and join it, drop by drop. He understands, suddenly and deeply, that what stands between his village and harm is not silence for its own sake, it is a fence built from hard lessons and harder sacrifices. We hold the memories, the spirit says. We hold the wisdom and the wounds. We keep the names of those who asked rightly and those who asked wrongly. We remember the faithful, and we remember the day the bargain went dark. Io's breath shakes. Then why call me? He asks, the question forming clear at last. If the door is to be guarded, why open it to me? The spirit tilts its head, the branches shift and the dreamscape brightens at the edges. Io sees a small figure, himself, standing at the edge of the shade, mouth set, eyes wet. He sees Sefer asleep on the mat, skin hot, hand limp. He sees Miri's nod, that tiny permission heavy with trust. Because you came not to take, but to carry, the spirit answers. Because love, when it is ready, does not break promises to get what it wants. It keeps promises to become strong enough to lose and still love. The tree's heartbeat grows louder in Io's hand. A new set of images unfolds, people who asked for rain and took only what watered all, a father who asked for strength to bury his son and then fed the hungry for a year, a girl who asked for a path through fear and then taught others to walk it. The baobab glowed brighter for each of them, not because magic bent to their will, but because their will bent toward mercy. Io's mind returns to Sefer, to her burning skin, to the way her breath catches like a fish in a net. His heart surges with two tides, one that begs for a miracle, another that refuses to make a wound to win a wish. He feels both at once, and the feeling almost breaks him. What can I do? He asks, voice small, honest. The spirit reaches with a branch hand and touches the cloth at his wrist. The touch is gentle as rain on ash. Io steps into the yard with the green leaf cupped in his hands. The night is thin and cool. A dog barks far away, then stops, as if the sound is not allowed. Inside the hut, Sefer coughs, weak, dry, lost. Miri's voice follows, a low hum, steady and tired. The smell of smoke and herbs hangs in the air. He kneels by the doorway and holds the leaf to the fire's glow. It still shines with a soft wetness that should not be there in a drought. He feels the calm the spirit left in him, but his heart still pulls in two directions, like a rope stretched between hope and fear. He steps inside. Sefer lies curled, skin too hot, breath too fast. Miri looks up, eyes swollen from watching. She says nothing. Io places the leaf in a small gourd, crushes it with the back of a spoon, and mixes the juice with cool water. He presses the rim to Sepha's lips. She swallows a little, then sleeps deeper, the heat easing the smallest bit. Miri's shoulders drop. Her hand finds Io's wrist, squeezes once. He knows what she is saying, thank you. He also knows what she is not saying, now what? The answer rises before he can shape it. The spirit's presence gathers around him, not as a shock but as a soft weight at his back, like a cloak set on his shoulders. There is another door, the many-voiced voice murmurs inside him. If you choose it, the heat will leave the child before dawn. If you choose it, the wells will fill by the week's end. If you choose it, your mother's voice will return to you in dreams you can touch. Io's breath catches. His body leans toward the promise before his mind can argue. To feel Sepha's cool forehead. To watch the rains walk across the fields. To hear his mother laugh again. How many times has he reached for that sound in the night? But know this, the spirit continues, and the weight changes, heavier now. This door is cut from old wood. It opens wide, and it does not know how to close. It will ask a price that spreads like roots. It will remember the taste of wanting and come back for more. The room seems to tilt. Io grips the mat to steady himself. The fire snaps and a tiny spark jumps, dies on the hard floor. Miri hums again. Sepha sighs and turns her face to the wall, as if chasing a cooler dream. Io's thoughts thicken. He sees two futures sliding past each other like shadows on water. In one, he takes the door with both hands. Sepha wakes before dawn, her skin cool, her eyes bright. Praise rises from the village like birds. Rain hits the roofs and the ground drinks. The granaries fill. Drums beat into the night. He feels a flood of joy, raw and loud. In the second, he says no. He keeps the leaf's gentle help and nothing more. He holds Sepha's hand through the hot hours, not certain which way the morning will bend. He watches the sky and waits for the slow rain that comes when it is ready, not when it is commanded. He accepts the ache of not fixing what he wants to fix. He learns to live with a grief that does not bow to bargains. The joy here is smaller, quieter, like a candle cupped in two hands. You came not to take, but to carry, the spirit had said. But what if carrying means watching someone you love slip away? What if the village needs more than patience? Io's chest tightens until it hurts. He presses his thumb into the cloth at his wrist. His mother's cloth. Warm from his skin. Wet from his fear. He closes his eyes and asks the question bare. If I open that door, what breaks? The answer rises like a wind from a deep place. He sees the baobab flushed with a strange light, bright at first, then sickly. He sees fields turning green too fast and then yellow even faster, as if the soil forgets how to rest. He sees disputes sharpen as people come to the tree with fists instead of open hands. He sees someone, maybe him, standing under the branches with a face hollowed by too much winning. He sees a rope scar on the low branch flash like a warning. He feels the spirit's sorrow swell until it covers the room. Io opens his eyes. The hut is small and still. Miri watches him, as if she can hear the storm inside him. He almost speaks the temptation aloud. I can end this. I can fix it. I can bring rain. I can bring her back. The words are sweet and heavy and wrong. He looks at Sepha again. He thinks of the stories the spirit showed him, the father who asked for strength to bury his son and then fed the hungry, the girl who asked for a path through fear and then taught others to walk it. Their faces were not joyful because they got what they wanted. They were joyful because they became who they needed to be. His choice does not feel heroic. It feels like standing in a river and letting the water move around him without trying to hold it still. He bows his head. I won't open that door, he whispers, so low that only the mat and the fire hear. I will not trade a wound for a wish. The spirit's presence steadies, not gone, not angry, simply there, like a hand bracing his back. Then ask for what keeps the village alive, it says, softer now. Ask for eyes to see what can be done with the hands you have. Ask for rain that comes in season and for hearts that bend instead of breaking. Io nods. He dips a clean cloth into the bowl and lays it across Sephir's forehead. He fans her with a strip of palm. He adds a breath more wood to the fire and stirs the pot of herbs so the steam lifts and cools the air. He whispers a simple prayer that is more about courage than rescue. Miri moves beside him, their work folding together the way fingers lace. Time is not kind, but it is honest. The night deepens. Sephir's heat does not vanish, but it loosens, little by little, like a knot being worked with patient hands. Io's shoulders ache. His eyes burn. He keeps going. He does not look toward the horizon to see if a quick miracle is racing across the fields. He stays here, where the battle is. Near dawn, a breeze slips through the doorway. It smells faintly of wet dust, the first breath before a faraway rain. Sephir's breathing evens. Miri lets out a long breath, the kind that empties the chest and makes room for hope. Io touches the leaf's empty gourd and feels no regret, only a quiet that holds. He steps outside for a moment, the sky washed grey, the stars dim. The baobab stands dark and still. A single bird calls and then another, testing the morning. Io lifts his face to the air and speaks without sound. I chose the smaller road. Help me keep walking. From the tree, a soft creak answers, like an old door settling into its frame. He turns back to the hut, ready to face whatever the day brings. His choice is not a finish line. It is a beginning. Lead into 7, return to the village. As the first light breaks, Io gathers water and herbs, then steps toward the common space to wake the healer and the neighbors. The village will need to move as one. And for the first time, he knows how to ask. The first warmth of dawn brushes across Io's face. He blinks, eyes heavy, and finds himself lying at the roots of the baobab. The bark is cool against his back, the earth beneath him damp with morning dew. For a moment he wonders if it was all a dream, the spirit, the voices, the choice he made. But then he feels the strip of cloth at his wrist, still wet with his own tears, and knows it was real. The world is quiet, but not empty. A light breeze drifts through the branches above, carrying the scent of rain that does not yet fall but promises it is near. Birds call in the distance, their voices sharp and alive. He listens closer and hears something new, frogs croaking from the dry riverbed, their throats swollen with song. The ground seems to breathe, as if the earth itself has loosened its chest. Io rises slowly. His body feels older, not from years, but from the weight of what he has carried. Yet he also feels lighter, like something inside him has been untied. He looks at the baobab, still silent, still towering, but no longer only a shadow of fear. It stands as a witness, as a keeper, as a reminder that some things are too great to be owned but not too distant to be loved. He begins the walk back to the village. The path glows pale under the morning sun. Along the way, he notices signs of change, ants swarming in long lines, carrying food toward their mounds, birds circling low, not restless, but steady, a thin trickle of water glistening in a crack where dust had ruled for weeks. Small signs, but enough to make his heart swell. At the edge of the huts, he pauses. Smoke curls from the cooking fires, but the air feels different, softer, filled with a quiet hope. He hears Miri's voice, low but steady, singing as she tends the pot. Inside, Sephir stirs, her breathing even, her fever cooled by the night's patience. Io kneels at the doorway and lets his hand rest against the wall. For the first time since his mother's death, the ache in his chest does not press like a wound. It rests like a scar, still there, but no longer raw. He understands now, love is not kept in bargains or in miracles. Love endures in the hands that carry, in the hearts that choose to stay. He steps inside, ready to face the day not as the boy who chased forbidden answers, but as the one who returned with the courage to live them. Lead into 8, the keeper of the secret. Outside, the baobab watches. Its branches sway once, slow and knowing, as if blessing him for the road still ahead. Years pass, and the boy who once stood trembling at the roots becomes a man with steady hands. Io's hair turns silver at the edges. His voice grows calm and low, the kind that makes people lean in. He walks the paths at dawn, greeting goats, touching fence posts, listening to the fields the way a healer listens to a chest. Children run beside him and call him Uncle Io, and sometimes Elder, though he smiles at the word like it is both heavy and kind. The village changes but also stays the same. Rains come in season more often than not. When they fail, people share what they have. Sefer grows strong and learns herbs from the healer. She laughs like their mother once did. Miri's shawl hangs by the doorway, worn smooth by years of use. On quiet evenings, Io sits beneath it and thanks the ones who came before. He returns to the Baobab often, never at the same hour, never with a crowd. He stands with open hands and a closed mouth. The tree answers in leaves and wind and the slow talk of roots. It holds what it has always held: memory, warning, mercy. Io's task is simple and hard: to keep the door guarded and the path clear, to teach asking with humility, to remind the village that love does not demand a bargain to be real. Sometimes a child pauses at the edge of the shade and stares up, curious the way Io once was. He sees their questions before they speak them. He tells them the rule, and then he tells them why. He does not use fear. He uses truth. Most turn away with a new respect. A few look back, and Io nods. He knows how a calling feels. At night, when stars press close and the land holds its breath, the Baobab stands tall and silent, like a guardian between two worlds. It keeps the balance, blessing in one hand, curse in the other, waiting for hearts brave enough to choose wisely and gentle enough to carry what follows.